Great. I do want to run by a quick agenda today just to give folks a little bit of an idea of what we will be covering. The first is student loan policy updates. The second is how bars are impacted and what can they do. The third would be the legal landscape and advocacy efforts. And then finally, we have some time set aside for an audience Q&A. And we do have a lot to cover today. So in the case that we do run over time, that Q&A session might be cut a little bit short, but hopefully we have an opportunity to answer your questions as they arise in the Q&A box. And with that, I would love to bring on and introduce our guests today. We're so thrilled to have these panelists with us. Selena Damian from the Student Loan Servicing Ombudsman, California DFPI, Natalia Abrams, the president of the Student Debt Crisis Center, and Sam Sang, the legislative director and policy advisor for Next Gen Policy. These are folks that are well-versed in this topic and spend a lot of their time and energies advocating for PSLF in the nonprofit sector. So they are well-versed in speaking about this and up to date on the current changes and how they are impacting borrowers. So we're thrilled to have them joining us today and excited for them to present their material to our community. And with that, we'll move along to Sam's section on the state of debt in California.
Thank you, Robert, and thanks everyone again for being here today. We will be getting to a bunch of information, but yes, going to start off on kind of what's happening in California. Despite all the headlines, we did want to make sure everyone understood that California has always been in the forefront in this area. We are thankful that we have a governor and a legislature who stands by student borrowers. So there are some important legislative bills and other items working its way through the California legislature that we thought it would be helpful to just put on your radar and so that you're aware, and other things to get involved in. So the first bill that we wanted to put on your radar is something that at least a couple of us are working on here to pass. This is the next forefront on issues related to student loan debt or education related debt. So AB 850 by Assemblymember Pacheco is the Increasing Institutional Debt Transparency and Protecting Students Act. So this is the next iteration, like we said, besides helping borrowers in the moment with their actual debt. This is another kind of lesser known education related debt that we are bringing awareness to and would like to tackle here before it becomes into a very large crisis for our California students. So these debts are something that is owed directly from a student to their college campus. So not necessarily involving any of the Department of Education's, but this could look like an unpaid tuition or fees, library fee, parking fee, that just happens to be on the student's account, and it prevents them from making academic progress. This kind of debt largely impacts our students who are from low-income families as a marker from receiving Pell Grants. So a Pell Grant is federal financial aid awarded based on financial need. And what happens in this situation for these students is that during the middle of the term, if something happens and the student is no longer able to continue, they take a break, they drop out of that term, the federal government charges the institution for the return of that money because the student, quote unquote, didn't use it. And then the schools decide to charge the student to pay that money back. And again, these are our most low income families that we know once that money is spent, it's probably not going to be seen again. It's very hard for these families to come up with that funds. And these were funds that they were expecting to be free. They were not, marketed or told as a loan. So it's now an institutional debt, making higher education even harder for these students. So the next slide, we'll go over exactly, kind of what is happening when you hold this institutional debt. We know that schools, in our opinion, would take rather harsh actions against a student to collect this money. Colleges are literally stopping students from re-enrolling, so forcing students to essentially drop out until they can pay back this debt. They can withhold degrees and certificates, harming students' prospects or employments. And they can even use third-party debt collectors, placing students, kind of on the receiving end of harassing phone calls, probably hurting their tax credit or credit report even before they graduate. And from what little research that we do know, because we've worked on this issue to try to find data where we could, at this point in time, we just know that there's probably going to be more, but at least 750,000 low-income students owe more than 350 million in institutional debt to our California public colleges. So again, this is definitely an issue that we think the state should agree or should tackle, and we want to get to it sooner than later. So the next slide will show exactly what the bill does. It's going to do three main things: establish a one-term grace period, let the student come back, even having that institutional debt, to work something out with their campus. Just like other financial products, if you missed a payment on a credit card or a mortgage, you don't immediately get kicked out of your home or lose your credit card, right? There are some chances to get back on track there. So the same thinking here, a student should get a chance to get back on track with paying off their institutional debt. We're also placing critical consumer protections. Again, these are, the schools are in the business of debt collection. So if they're going to use debt collectors, those debt collectors should be licensed with the state of California. The schools need to have a clear written policy on how they're going to go about debt collection, let students know. And then most importantly, we are going to be prohibiting this kind of debt from being reported to credit reporting agencies. We don't see that as an effective tool for collection. Probably most students don't know what a credit score is. I certainly didn't in my college years. So it's really hard to argue that this is something that is bringing home revenue to our schools. And then lastly, the bill provides further transparency on this issue by mandating consistent data collection and reporting so that in the future, we know exactly how to tackle this problem with more precise tools. And so just next slide on what's happening right now. The bill is about to be heard in its first policy committee, the Assembly Higher Education Committee, this coming Tuesday. If anybody is around Sacramento, please join us in the fun. Get involved in the legislative process here with us. You can find myself. I will be there in person in the state capitol to spend the afternoon advocating for this bill. And otherwise, if you're not able to and are so moved, here are some other avenues to get involved. You can call offices directly, especially to the chair or the committee, just simply stating your name, that you support the bill. They might ask for a zip code, so you can give them your place of employment if you feel more comfortable with that, just so they can see who's calling from what area of the state. So that is a important bill that we're working on that we really wanted to highlight. Again, will be the next kind of step in working on student debt issues here in the state of California. But there are other bills to highlight that we wanted to just put on your radar again, that are good bills in our minds that are working its way through, and in some cases still getting fleshed out. So AB 866 by Assemblymember Ortega will strengthen our California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, who you will be hearing from. Selena is here to talk about her great work over there. So we certainly want to arm our department, DFPI for short, with more tools to hold servicers accountable here in California. That bill is doing well. It is moving through the legislative process. Going to hear its next policy committee shortly. Next, there is another assembly member who is very passionate about student borrowers, is what we're learning. So she has introduced AB 700, which would, right now, it's reading like establishing a new California Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. However, given everything that's happening at the federal level, her office is working with us to figure out what is the best course of action for this year on these issues. So she is going to put a hold on that bill, but that gives us an avenue to really address anything that happens this year in the next cycle, since everything is so in flux today. So she is someone that we will be working with and someone to put on your radar to talk to on these issues, in case you see her around. And then finally, Assembly Member Elawari with AB 681 will increase access to higher education for our undocumented students. California does have a Dream Loan program for AB 540 precisely for undocumented students in California. Those loans closely mirror the federal loans in terms of, more affordable options, more protections around these loans. So we definitely have an avenue for those families and communities here in California to access higher education. And so that bill is also doing well, and it's moving along the process and will be voted on by the full assembly floor soon, and then will make its way to the Senate. And then we're going to deep dive more into federal updates later on from Selena and Natalia, but there's two that I just quickly wanted to touch on that are going to have some real world impacts to student borrowers, and something just to keep note of. So you might be hearing something called budget reconciliation happening at the federal level. This is a different budget process than what we do here in California. That the federal government is engaging with. And what we are hearing is that as they are preparing their budget resolutions to pass at the congressional level, there are some proposals on the table that would really impact student borrowers and college students across the board. So for instance, there are proposals to cut the student loan repayment programs like you've been hearing, that I know Natalia and Selena will speak to more, such as eliminating the SAVE program. They've proposed cutting Pell Grant amounts, and even taxing scholarships. So that hasn't happened yet, but that is, something that is being discussed at the federal level that we just wanted to put on your radar. And I'm sure you'll hear updates from Robert and other groups as things do actually happen. The other piece that you might have been hearing is around the Department of Education's reduced workforce. So they are running at a 50% reduced level in staffing at Department of Education. That has had already impacts to borrowers trying to get their questions answered, paperwork processed at the Department of Education. Unfortunately, with that reduced workforce, it does mean that a lot of folks are left with questions unanswered, including, current college students trying to fill out financial aid applications. So we know that that's happening now, but we did want to make clear that the Department of Education still exists. So yes, the president signed an executive order to begin dismantling it, but nothing has actually happened in terms of dismantling it, besides the workforce reduction. So that means federal financial aid is still available. If you have any students thinking about going to college, please, please, please tell them to explore their options. And then also, even if the Department of Education is demolished, that does not mean your loans get eliminated either. So unfortunately, your loans are still there, even if things shift or change. So everyone should still be making payments as best they can. So wanted to debunk anything on that. Department of Education is still there, financial aid is still there, and student loans still exist that you still need to work on paying off. And on that, I did mention that, it's hard to get your questions answered from Department of Education because of the reduced workforce. But luckily, we live in the great state of California, and we have a wonderful student loan ombudsperson, Selena Damian, who's going to go into what you can get here in California and the help that you can get on your student loans.
Thank you, Sam, for all that information. Yeah, I think I can't stress enough the importance just at telling everyone that the Department of Education is still there. Your loans are still due, are still active. And I will talk about servicers and their roles right now in a few slides. But yeah, thank you, Sam, for all that information. First of all, again, I'm Selena Damian, the ombudsperson here in California, and I work out of the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. We are the California Consumer Protection Agency. We are the state counterpart for the CFPB. And as you know, there's a lot going on also with the CFPB. And I think more than ever, it's really important for people to know who their where their state resources are. As a consumer protection agency, we regulate companies of financial products. So all financial institutions such as banks, credit unions, payday mortgage lenders, money transmitters, payday student loan servicers, debt collectors. So consumer protections, we enforce all the state consumer protections, and regardless of what's going on the federal level, we will continue enforcing those laws on the state level. So just really important for people to keep that in mind. We are working hard within the department. We are aware of everything that's going on. We continue to monitor situations. Regardless of changes on the federal level, we have our state laws to enforce, and we will continue doing so. As the Consumer Protection Agency, we accept and we evaluate consumer complaints, and that includes those from student loan borrowers against their servicers. Just quickly, the student loan servicers, for those that are confused about it, or just as a reminder, those are your main point of contact. For student loan servicers with federal loans, those are your Mohila, Advantage, Nelnet, and I'm missing one. Sorry, I'm blanking out, but your federal student loan servicer, when you call, contact customer service, they're sending out the bills. These are the companies that we regulate, not only federal servicers, but private servicers as well. We take enforcement and legal action when companies are not in compliance. We enforce these protections, and we conduct education and outreach such as this one to enhance consumer awareness. Next. I talked about student loan related protections. One important protection that we have in California, it's a newer one, California Student Borrower Bill of Rights, and this applies to those servicers that I just mentioned, both federal and private. It prohibits them from engaging in abusive, unfair, or deceptive practices, and it requires that they work in the best financial interest of borrowers. They have to post and process student loan payments in a timely manner, timely process its paperwork, maintain records for a minimum of 3 years, provide you with information and applications for IDR repayment plans, other forms of federal benefits and protections, and they have to respond to a borrower's qualifying request. So that could be any request from a borrower, whether over the phone or in writing, and they have to protect borrowers from any negative consequences. A borrower can file a complaint with us if they feel that their servicer has violated any of these laws, which we know that there are currently long wait times. We know that borrowers are experiencing a lot of customer service issues, inconsistent information. With everything going on, there's a huge backlog with applications, there's confusion with forbearances. So we really want to know what's going on with these servicers. You can file a complaint with us, not only if you're having an issue with your servicer, but if you want to obtain your account history, if you have questions about transactions. I sometimes when I assist borrowers and they want to know how their payments are being applied, if interest was paid, what the amount of interest was during a month, or they just have multiple loans and they just want a accounting of their loans, I tell them to submit a complaint and request that in writing. It's always best to get everything in writing from your servicer. Under this bill, a borrower also has a right to take legal action. This is called a private right of action. So any consumer who suffers damage as a result of a failure of a student loan servicer to comply can bring action against the servicer to recover damages, restitution, punitive damages, attorney fees, or other damages. Really important. And then this bill also created my position, and I work with borrowers to help them understand their options. And I work with Department of Education, the CFPB, and then other state ombudsmen. So other states, I know Robert said there may be people from out of state. You can look up to see if your state has a Bill of Rights and if they have an advocate, an ombudsperson, or if they have, sometimes they work out of they have attorney generals who also who enforce these type of protections or have these type of bills that apply to student loan borrowers. Next, please. Additional borrower protections in the state. One of them is a Private Student Loan Collections Reform Act. And this one protects private student loan borrowers from unsubstantiated lawsuits and collection on illegitimate debts. So private education lender or loan collector cannot initiate a loan collection action unless they possess certain documents. And they can enter judgment in favor of the lender. So really important if you are experiencing this type of action. And then under the Bill of Rights, we've also have updated regulations and the Student Licensing Act, where now we are licensing those with income share agreements, retail installment contracts. So these are different type of higher education financing that we've seen aside from student loans. These are new types of financing that schools are offering. Federal protections. Your federal protections are written in the Higher Education Act. These protections are in your master promissory note. I think it's really important to note there's a lot of questions regarding regarding your rights and what's going to happen in the future with PSLF. The terms and conditions that are there are those in the HEA, and they can't be anything new going forward. Any law enacted forward cannot be applied retroactively. So these are your rights, and those include IDR plans, those include IDR and PSLF forgiveness. So really important, those terms and conditions cannot be changed. Truth in Lending Act and then Fair Credit Reporting Act. And the reason I mentioned that, as student loan borrowers, you are a consumer. So you do have those federal and state consumer protections that apply to you. Next, please. PSLF, the reason we're all here. So we know, I'm not going to get into the full requirements, details of all the types of loans, but just as a reminder, PSLF was created by Congress through the legislative process and signed into federal law in 2007. Any employment after 2007 will count towards PSLF. For the program, you must have the right type of loan, the eligible payment, which this is where we're having an issue right now, we're going to discuss, and then the qualifying employment. I do want to point out that under the Higher Education Act, under the law, a qualifying employer means an organization under Section 501c3 of the IRS code that is exempt from taxation. So it has to do with the 501c3 status, okay? And then eligible payment. This is again where we're having the issue. Eligible payment, any payment, even if it's a $0 payment made on an income-driven repayment plan. So you have 4 IDR plans. You have your ICR, IBR, your repay and your pay. And then, as we know, one of those was converted into SAVE. And that's what's causing all the disruption right now. Next, please. So as we know, SAVE was created in 2023, and then on July 18th, 2024, a federal court issued a stay preventing the department. So when it was created, several states challenged the plan, and it went all the way to a federal court of appeal, and it is currently, so basically what happened, it prevented the Department of Education from operating the SAVE plan. In July 2024, after millions of borrowers had already enrolled in the plan, were making their payments, they were automatically placed on forbearance. During this forbearance, no payments were due or are due. Borrowers are not accruing interest on their loans. However, this time in forbearance does not count towards PSLF, and that's where PSLF borrowers encountered this hardship issue. Many that were maybe trying to enroll in the program for the first time were just continuing to make progress or were close to the 120. When this occurred, servicers already had a backlog of IDR applications and the processing was extremely delayed. So when this occurred, a lot of borrowers initially tried to switch over to another plan. They were trying to continue to make progress, and they applied for other plans, whether manual applications or online applications, but due to this backlog, they've just been pending. Typically, when a borrower switches plans, they are placed on a processing forbearance for up to 60 days, which should still be happening. If the borrowers, in the case of the borrowers that were in the SAVE plan, if their applications were not processed within the 60 days, then they were placed back to on the SAVE forbearance. So if you submitted your new IDR application or applied to switch from a SAVE forbearance to another IDR application, and were placed on this processing forbearance, 60 days, that one did count for PSLF. So you had 60 days of qualifying PSLF credit, but if it wasn't processed, you were switched back to SAVE. We're seeing where there's a lot of borrowers where they applied. It is confusing to understand, and I probably confused you a little bit more, but we'll be talking about it a little bit more later, or you can ask questions. But basically, a lot of borrowers are stuck, and I'm seeing this on a daily basis where they moved or they were just trying to accumulate credit. They weren't sure which other plan to apply for. This litigation also paused IDR forgiveness for those that were also maybe trying to do PSLF and IDR forgiveness. For those that don't know, the IDR plans, the ones that are PSLF eligible, also have a forgiveness component to them. It's not a 10-year plan, but it's a 20 or 25-year, and that one doesn't require the employment. So many borrowers are on both tracks. You can be on both tracks. So basically, this backlog just halted off credit for forgiveness. And then in this year, February 2025, the Department of Education closed all IDR applications and instructed servicers to stop processing as a result of another court directive. So that, again, another few months with borrowers in limbo, stuck without making PSLF progress. Just last month, the IDR applications reopened, both the paper and the online applications. Next, please. Okay, so as I said, they're now available. So now you can switch over to IBR, pay as you earn, the pay plan, or ICR plans. The processing is resuming. It's going to be slow. As you can see, we already had a backlog of applications prior to, at the time that this injunction happened. The new IDR plans no longer have the save option, and they no longer have the lowest monthly payment option on them, which was available before. So you would check that, and then they would automatically select the one that was the best option for you. So now you have to select one of the IDR plans if you want to switch over to another plan to continue accruing PSLF credit. Another thing to keep in mind, we talked about the IDR plans being one of the eligible repayment plans, or I mentioned that a standard plan is also available also counts towards PSLF credit if you do not have a consolidated loan. So if you have never consolidated your loan, you have a direct loan, you can actually get on a standard plan and continue getting PSLF credit. Now, is that going to be the most beneficial to you? It's all going to depend. All the COVID years count towards PSLF. So that's 3.5 years that you didn't have to make payments, almost 4 years where you didn't have to make payments and you were able to get credit. So let's say the first 3 years you were on an IDR plan, 4 years you didn't have to make payments, and now you can get the standard plan. If the payment is doable, manageable, you can actually get credit if it's not a consolidated loan. So you may be able to resume on that. That's always an option, and borrowers sometimes don't realize that, or we don't mention it enough. But again, it's for non-consolidated loans. Keep in mind, payments may be higher under other plans. IBR requires a partial hardship, so it's just important that you understand what your payment would be. You can go on to Department of Education and you can plug in your information and get an estimate of your monthly payment, or you can call your servicer and ask them to give you an amount. Now, I understand, everything I talked about at the beginning, but some servicers are still answering questions, they're still providing information. Most of them are, it's just a matter of waiting. And then you can get a more accurate amount. So if it's an amount that's manageable and you want to continue accruing credit, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's all going to depend on your situation, and that's really important to keep in mind. Are you just at the beginning of your journey, of your PSLF journey? Can you wait it out and see what's going to happen with the borrowers that are on SAVE forbearance, which probably will go through the fall of 2025 of this year? We still don't know if those borrowers are going to be switched automatically to another plan, and we don't know, or if they're going to just give borrowers time to switch over. So you have to determine, do I just wait this out? Am I newer in the program, or am I getting ready to retire and I'm at 117 and I need to move now? What do I do? Well, since everything is resuming now, as I said, you can apply to figure out which plan is best for you, apply for another IDR plan. As soon as the servicer touches your application, you'll be placed on a processing forbearance for 60 days, which gives you some credit. And then at that point, if they are not able to fully process your application, you'll be placed back on the SAVE forbearance. So you'll have to make that determination depending on your situation. Processing has resumed for borrowers who file taxes as single or married with no income, and all other processing is expected to resume in less than a month. So by May 10th by next month, we should see all processing for all IDR applications again, except for SAVE, because that's no longer going to be available. Consolidation application is available both online and via paper application. Again, expect delays. Make sure you keep copies of all your applications. Call your servicers, write to your servicers to find out if that monthly payment is suitable for you. Remember, ICR is the only income-based plan available for those that have a parent plus loan or that consolidated either their loan into a direct consolidation loan, or they consolidated their own loans with it. So any loan that includes a parent plus loan is only eligible for ICR. Okay, the income contingent plan, they are still eligible for PSLF. We do have DFPI does have a PSLF only webinar where we will be discussing all the requirements and going into detail on June 3rd. I can post that information on the chat. Next, please. The future of SAVE. SAVE will most likely be officially eliminated. So it's no longer available. It's either going to be officially eliminated through the courts or through the Congress budget reconciliation process. We don't know that yet. As I said, the new IDR application no longer has SAVE on there. Borrowers are expected to remain on the SAVE forbearance until the fall of 2025. There's no guidance on what's going to happen with those borrowers. They'll either be moved to another plan automatically or given time to move. The first recertification deadline will be no earlier than February 1st, 2026. So guidance was recently issued on recertification. If you submitted your recertification request on or before February 20th of this year, 2025, and your servicer completed processing of your request, and there is no impact to you. If you submitted your recertification request on or before February 2025 and your servicer did not complete processing your request, then your recertification date will be extended 1 year. You do not need to submit a recertification at this time. And if you did not submit your recertification request on or before February 20th, then you may have to switch to IDR plans. When I'm talking about recertification here, I'm talking about IDR recertification, not your employment certification form for PSLF. So this is important for borrowers who are on a current IDR plan. So that when I'm talking with certification here, it's for IDR. As you know, when you're on an IDR plan, you have to recertify yearly as you do with your PSLF. Next, please. Well, PSLF doesn't necessarily have to be yearly, but that's what we recommend. Student Loan Empowerment Network is a network of agencies that DFPI has created to help borrowers. As you can hear, this is all confusing. And as I said, this is not a one size fits all. You can contact somebody if you're a borrower in California. You can call or you can log on here and be connected to a counselor. If you're having more complex issues, even private loan issues, you can be connected to a legal aid and they can provide assistance to borrowers. They can help you sit down and understand what type of loans you have. They can help you apply for PSLF. They can help you if you're maybe trying to apply for total permanent disability discharge or any type of discharge, federal discharge. Next, please. So as always, I do have to warn people with all this confusion, everything that we're hearing on the news about the Department of Education, PSLF, unfortunately, people take advantage of this, of borrowers' confusion. If you receive a call, text, or a letter offering assistance, don't do anything. First, verify the information and research the company. That's why it's very important for you to know who your servicer is. Is it one of the ones that I mentioned at the beginning? You should only be receiving information or dealing with Department of Education or your servicer. You can verify the information and research the company. If you're getting these emails, do not give out your login information or your FSA PIN. Do not subscribe to any monthly service. Sign a contract via DocuSign. That's typically how they're sending these agreements. Or provide payment information. They'll have borrowers who are signing power of attorneys to these companies. Check your portals. Check your servicer portal, student aid portal to see if, check for any communication and see if there's any change in guidance. Just remember, there's nothing that a company can do for you that you can't do on your own for free. All this information that I talked about, switching IDR plans, recertifying, anything having to do with PSLF, you can do for free. And as with anything, not just student loans, if you are receiving multiple calls a day offering special access, guaranteed it may be a scam, and you can file a complaint with us. It is very hard to retrieve your money. It's very hard for us to, or for agencies to track these companies. Many times they're overseas. So be really careful, especially I've seen a lot of elderly victims, unfortunately. So just, spread this information and please be aware. Next, please. I believe the next one is, okay, this is just two emails or two sample scam emails. This is what we're seeing. Sometimes they'll have the borrower's information and they'll know how many loans you have or how much loan balance you have. So just really important to, if you see anything similar to this, then eligibility, they can help you with forgiveness. Please be aware. Next, please. I believe this one is the emails. And I see a lot of questions coming in. Okay, I'm gonna try to answer some and then, but I'll hand it over to Natalia.
Thank you so much, Selena. As Selena mentioned, I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the president and founder at Student Debt Crisis Center. We are a national organization with almost 2 million supporters nationwide and over 150,000 folks here in California. I'm also California based, and we do a lot of work with Next Gen Policy and the California Coalition for Borrowers' Rights. And we are here to call for fundamental reforms to change student loan policies and end the student debt crisis once and for all. Moving on. So Selena and Sam were touching on some of this, but just to go over the federal updates as of this year, and oh man, a lot has happened. So first we saw what was called the reduction in force, or the RIF, which was a 50% reduction in the force at the Department of Education. Specifically, we lost great folks in the Ombuds office. They have been replaced, but it's not the same folks that we had worked with for years, and it was very unfortunate to see the illegal firings. Then after that, we saw the executive order, it's a little out of order actually, but to limit access to public service loan forgiveness, and we're going to go over that, and the executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. I will say with those 2 points, nothing has actually changed with your student loan. As Sam mentioned, the Department of Education still does exist. Your student loan, unfortunately, still does exist, and the Department of Education is the loan holder as of now if you have federal loans. In addition, going over what Selena covered, there are updates to income-driven repayment programs. We've seen processing delays. I saw some of this with the questions. They've been extremely delayed. We've heard of many people that did apply last year and still have not seen their applications processed. We are being told that May 10th, processing will resume, and you can apply for income-driven repayment programs right now, or apply to switch out of the SAVE program into an alternative program. More updates. There were comments made by Trump to move the student loan portfolio to the Small Business Administration. Again, that has not happened, and that would need to take an act of Congress in order to move the loans to either SBA or to Treasury. So I mentioned you'll hear about reconciliation. We're expecting in the next few weeks to see a finalized budget, or getting close to a finalized budget, and unfortunately they are trying to cut upwards of $330 billion from education, which we definitely think that if they are successful with that, we will see cuts to the student loan program. So definitely stay tuned and watch this space and connect with Cal Nonprofits for updates in the coming weeks and months. Things changed a lot. All of this, as you can see, has happened this year. Just to go back real quick on the public service loan forgiveness, again, we'll get more in depth, but there is a ongoing negotiated rulemaking process right now in public comments period, and two hearings, one virtual, one in person, that are coming up. This is the time to make your voice heard. We know so many organizations are concerned about the executive order to limit what employers get public service loan forgiveness. But on the slight silver lining, we expect this to be a lengthy process and potentially not even see a preliminary or final rule until the end of this year. So this is not something that has happened now. Nobody's status has been currently taken away. Moving on. So with all of these changes, what can you do? What can you share with your colleagues to do with the changes to the student loan system? So the best thing to do is make sure you know all the information for your own loans. Make sure you know who your student loan servicer is, that you have access to your account on their website, as well as at studentaid.gov. Save any communications and document what you receive from your servicer. Print, download, and screenshot. We are telling everyone that will listen this that you need to make sure to have screenshots or downloads of all of the information at studentaid.gov, specifically your public service loan forgiveness credit count, that's that toolbar, and your income-driven repayment credits, which should be on the right, on a sidebar at studentaid.gov, and it will show exactly how many credits that you've counted towards public service loan forgiveness and towards income-driven repayment. Another thing you can do is consider enrolling an income-based repayment if you qualify. This is a student loan student loan balance to income ratio. So it benefits people with very high student loan balances and lower income folks. So if you do qualify for income-based repayment, that has, when we say written into law, that has been passed legislatively. And so we are being told, I'm not an attorney to clarify, but from all the attorneys that we work with, this is the safest program. It's also not connected to the SAVE lawsuits, which right now for income contingent repayment and pay as you earn, even if you've hit your credit count, you are still in limbo waiting to have your debt canceled because it is enjoined with the SAVE lawsuit. Income-based repayment is separate from that. The other thing is, we don't know what will happen with income-driven repayment programs. We are in this negotiated rulemaking period right now for both public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment programs, and a catch-all, which is, anything else to do with the student loan program. So we unfortunately do expect changes to the income-driven repayment programs, but nothing has changed as of yet, except for the SAVE program being you no longer can apply to the SAVE program. So to find out whether you qualify for income-based repayment, and you should all be familiar with this if you're on public service loan forgiveness, you can use the loan simulator at studentaid.gov. So there's the recent, will this recent executive order impact your forgiveness? And so I touched on this briefly, but the goal of the executive order is to limit the scope of eligibility, so not your actual forgiveness. And therefore, if your employer is disqualified, then it also would disqualify you. There's also a fear that through reconciliation, through this negotiated rulemaking process, that they would get rid of the loan forgiveness aspects of ICR and pay. Some of the specific executive order language targets folks who work with undocumented folks and transgender folks. We know, and we've talked to many organizations that are afraid of what will happen if you are bothered as I am about what's going on. We really encourage you to make your comments heard. You can go to this link that is on the slide at regulations.gov and submit public comment until May 5th. You can also sign up for speaking slots. I know our team has, and a lot of other teams, to share your story. They're limiting one per organization, but this is another great way to have your voice heard. And I think we can move on. All right, I'll throw it back to you, Robert.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalia. And to Sam and Selena. I know we've covered a lot of complex information today, and a lot of the topics that we've discussed can be confusing. So I want to run through some of the questions in the chat. I'm going to take a couple that I think apply across the board to many of us that are in public service loan forgiveness.
Robert, can I just answer a few things that when I was.
Yeah, please do.
If you previously submitted an application to switch IDR and you selected the lowest monthly payment, I would recommend that and it's pending, I would recommend that you submit a new one with the new application and then select one of the plans. Because it was my understanding those with lowest payment were not going to be processed. So I would recommend for those borrowers to do that. PSLF buyback, I don't know, Natalia, if you mentioned that. I know I didn't mention it, but buyback is still available and it looks like it's resuming. For those who are not familiar with buyback, that's for those borrowers who are on PSLF close to and buying months of forbearance deferment would put them at the 120. So let's say you're at 115, you need, and if you look at your payment history, you have a few months that were under forbearance or deferment. You can submit a buyback request and have the department look at your qualifying payments, and they basically let you buy those months. So they let you go back, they'll calculate what amount you would have paid under the plan that you were on at the time, and then they'll give you an amount and they'll say, okay, we're going to let you buy those 5 back. You just have to pay a certain amount. Those save forbearance months, though, those do not count for buyback. And the reason, I believe the reason is because they're not able to calculate what amount since you were on forbearance. So I know a lot of people want to do buyback for the save forbearance months, but those months probably will not count. So just so you're aware, but let's say previously, prior to July 2024, you go back and there's 3 or 4 months that would put you over the 120. You can go on studentaid.gov, PSLF buyback, and you can submit a request for that. And then you'll get correspondence from Department of Education where they'll calculate that and then they'll let you buy those months. Again, it's a slow process, but it's still available. So try, and then somebody asked, should I switch? I try to switch IDR plans or do buyback. I would say do both because you know, you may be able to get on an IDR plan, continue accruing credit, and then meanwhile they're working on your buyback. So I would say both options. Those were my 2 cents. I'll continue looking at the questions.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Selena said, so there have been a lot of questions about buyback in the chat. The buyback is really only going to be available to you if the buyback enables you to reach a 120 credits. I know a lot of us that are on PSLF right now that are in the SAVE program have been on forbearance, and we would love to buy back those months. Right now, that's not an option for us, right? And we're waiting to see if that is, but most likely, I think the consensus is it will probably not be an option. I have a question here that we've discussed before, but I want to bring it up one more time and to get folks' opinion on them. It comes from Martian. We were told to get on the SAVE plan. Now we are told that the payments on the SAVE plan don't go towards PSLF. We've been on that forbearance since July of last year. Can you please just tell us what plan to get on? Does anyone have a quick, simple answer? I know it really does depend on a case-by-case basis, but I think this is an overwhelming question that a lot of folks are asking right now.
As I mentioned in my part, if you're able to get on income-based repayment, that is probably going to be the safest. But as you said, it is a case-by-case basis. It's hard to give a blanket answer to that. But switch into one of the other repayment programs, and processing will begin May 10th on that, but you can get your application in. And as Selena mentioned, do not select, which I don't think it's an option anymore, the lowest payment.
Not on the new app.
Right. And so it's that income-based repayment programs, the IBR repayment.
Correct. But not everyone qualifies for it. A lot of folks, you know, either their income is too high to their loan balance.
Right. So it is a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and we are seeing people get to the 120, people seeing the green banner. We are seeing slowly, PSLF is still, the forgiveness is actually still happening. So I know that people are skeptical. The program is still moving along, still chugging along. Forgiveness is happening for both the PSLF and IDR forgiveness under the income-based repayment plan that Natalia said. So, and we understand there's a lot of skepticism, and we understand that it's not fair that borrowers were told to get on SAVE. I mean, we advocated for that to get on SAVE. We had no idea that this was going to happen. Because at that time it was a very beneficial plan for borrowers, and you know, that's what we do, right? That was the guidance from Department of Education. So we understand this is not a borrower's doing. I mean, people have been stuck on this for almost a year. It's unfortunate, but we did get 4 years of COVID. So I mean, I always try to, like, you know, try a good with the bad. So for someone who's like you may have to essentially do 11 years maybe and 3 years without payment. So I mean, I know it's difficult. I just always try to you know, I don't know, look at the good and the bad. Things are starting to move along. IDR applications will start being processed, and then submit your buyback, even if you're not sure of those months back. I've seen in some cases where they get buyback for months and they don't even know why the department gave them the chance to buy back those months and what type of forbearance. I mean, you never know. Apply for the buyback and you maybe get more months than you thought you were eligible for. Just if you think there might be a chance that that those could qualify, go ahead and do it, and then do your IDR application at the same time. It doesn't hurt. They can't leave everyone in limbo forever. So it's a good start to be here today, and I see we're at 12:01 already.
We are. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Like we said before, a lot of this does depend on your individual situation. So I would encourage you to reach out to Selena or myself. We'd be happy to try and facilitate answers for you and give more personalized advice depending on your personal situation. I know I really do want to recognize that it is a confusing situation and there's a lot of uncertainty. I myself am a student borrower that is on SAVE, that have been in forbearance. So I very much understand the angst and uncertainty that everyone is going through right now. And I'm navigating this with you. So we here at Cal Nonprofits, as well as the DFPI, the folks at Next Gen Policy and Natalia at Student Debt Crisis Center, we're all advocating on your behalf and working hard to try and resolve this issue for our community. With that in mind, I want to thank our panelists today. Sharing your expertise with our community is really something that we're so grateful for. Even if it is still confusing and there is still so much uncertainty, it's really wonderful to hear voices from trusted messengers like yourself, and we appreciate the work that you're doing on our behalf. I really can't thank you enough for all of the time and energy you spend advocating for us in this subject. And then I want to thank all of our registrants today. We had a full house, many people registered from across the state and nationally. We know this is an important issue that is really top of mind for lots of folks right now, and we'll continue to provide you with updates as they become available. I also want to mention, as I see there are many questions in the chat, everyone will be receiving a recording from today's webinar. We'll also include the PowerPoint slides and any of the references that we resourced. We'll also include the contact information so you can reach out and ask individualized questions.